So the topic I was asked to discuss today is Hadlokas Aner Bebeit HaKnesset. Tov Reish Ayin Aleph Siv Zayin. The Shulchan Aruch writes that we're madlik is Aner Bebeit HaKnesset with a brocha. And the Mishnah Berurah, Siv Kot Mem Dalet, simply says we make a brocha on a minig because there is a minig of Hadlokas Aner Bebeit HaKnesset. And the Mishnah Berurah is a pele, because this is a big machloikis in the Rishonim. Do we say a brocha on a minig or don't we say a brocha on a minig?
Mishnah Berurah, he'll be there for a while.
So the Mishnah Berurah, I think it's Yivkot Mem Daled. I apologize because, as I said before, my family was here. I didn't even prepare today's shir, but I do remember the sugya, so I apologize. I think the Mishnah Berurah stuff Reisha and Aleph Yivkot Mem Daled, when the Shulchan Aruch Siv Zayin says that we make a brocha on Hadlokas Ner Chanuka, Madliken u'Mavorchen, Avde bebeit HaKnesset urak menhaga, Makol Mokum, Mevorchen, Kemo shemevorchen al Halal d'Rosh Chodesh she'einoi elo minag. But that's a pele, because the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Siman Tov Chav Beis that we don't say a brocha on Halal b'Rosh Chodesh. That's a big machloikes Rambam in Tosfos. And the Rambam in two different sources. Perek Yud Aleph Halacha Tozayim Hilchos Brochas, Perek Gimel Halacha Zayim Hilchos Chanuka. Shulchan Aruch paskins, we don't say a brocha. The Rambam paskins, Halal Rosh Chodesh is only a minig, and that is why we don't say a brocha on Halal b'Rosh Chodesh. Shulchan Aruch Tov Chav Beis, Siv Beis, paskins in accordance to the Rambam. So as you know, the Shulchan Aruch almost always follows in the footsteps of the Rambam. And that is the Mesoros HaHalacha of the Sephardi world. Tosfos, Brochas Yudalid, and in other sources in Shas, Tosfos maintains, we do say a brocha on a minig. So are we having on our screen either the Rambam or the Shulchan Aruch or Tosfos? So it's a machlokes Rambam in Tosfos. Do we say a brocha on Halal Rosh Chodesh? Ashkenazim do say. That's the opinion of the Ramon Tov Chav Beis. Sephardim don't say. Just an interesting fact: there are two Hasidus in Eretz Yisrael that don't say a brocha on Halal Rosh Chodesh. I don't know whether you're aware of that. Slonim Hasidim and Karlina Hasidim don't say a brocha Halal in Rosh Chodesh. I don't know what they do in America, but in Eretz Yisrael, Hasidus Slonim and Hasidus Kalim don't say a brocha. And the reason is, they were the first two Hasidic groups that came en masse to Eretz Yisrael before the Holocaust. And therefore, they were Mekabel al Atzmam Minag Eretz Yisrael, which is the Minag of the Beis Yosef. So Slonim and Hasidim were concentrated primarily in Tveria, way before they were in Yerushalayim. And in the Golel, the minig is Beis Yosef is the accepted minig, and Ashkenazim in Tzfas and Tveria don't say a brocha on Halal Rosh Chodesh. So even though they're Ashkenazim and all the other halachas are in accordance to the Ramah, but there are two Hasidic groups that don't say Halal and Rosh Chodesh. So the Mishnah Berurah says, we say a brocha on Hadloka bebeit HaKnesset, kamo shemevorchen al Halal. But the Beis Yosef paskins, we don't say a brocha on Halal and Rosh Chodesh because it's only a minig. On the other hand, the Beis Yosef paskins, we do say a brocha on Hadlokas Ner Chanuka bebeit HaKnesset. So obviously, they are not the same. V'lav ho b'ho talya. So let's go all the way back and try to understand what is the origin of the minig Hadlokas Ner Chanuka bebeit HaKnesset. We do not find this in the Gemara. All we find in the Gemara is Ner Yishu Beisoy Al Pesach Bayis Mibechutz. We find no remes in the Gemara Hadlokas Ner Chanuka bebeit HaKnesset. So there are three different approaches, three different explanations. What is the origin and what is the reasoning for the minig Hadlokas Ner Chanuka bebeit HaKnesset? The Rivash Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, Tshuvas HaRivash. The Rivash was one of the greatest Talmidim of the Ran. Haminig hazeh lahadlik bebeit knesset minig v'sikin emishim pesum enisa. Given she'ein anachnu yochol l'makayim hamitzvah ketekona, kol echad bebeisoi she'ilanicha al pesach beisim v'chutz, and because ato yada umo yistakuf aleinu einon yochol l'makayim hamitzvah ketekona, ma dekol echad bepesach beisim bebefnim ve'ein kam pesum enisa, and that is why we are madlik bebeit knesset. So the Rivash gives a very interesting reasoning. The minig of Adlukas Nebe Beis Knesset came to be after we were mevatel the minig and the halacha of Pesach Beisoim Mebachutz. So this is a besondere sugya. It's a different sugya, and maybe we'll discuss it. You know, I don't know what the plan is for next week, but in Hilchos Chanuka, there's a big discussion regarding Mokoim ha'adloka bizman hazeh. Hasidim in the entire world are madlik b'torch habayis, mezuzim miyamin, ner Chanukah mismor. I think Litvisha, in Israel, everybody is madlik al Pesach beisim abuchutz, especially the Litvisha olam. My late father, in New York and in Eretz Yisrael as well, was madlik b'chaloin. The window facing Rishus HaRabim. In Yerushalayim, the salon, which is the living room in my father's home, went out to the Merpeset. Nobody could see from the Merpeset. You know, it's in Minchas Yitzchak, the Merpeset, the porch, overlooks a big park. However, there's a door from the living room to the porch and mezuzim in ner Chanukah mismor. But Chasidim are noya kiminig rabosayim, and they are madlik b'fnim. I myself am madlik b'fnim and b'chutz. Why? I am madlik b'torch habayis, because that is minig avoisai and minig raboisai. And to me, minig avois is something to be upheld. Minig avois is precious. It is part of our chinuch. It is part of what defines us. Minig avoiseihem biyodeihem. And minig is extremely important, and that is why I am madlik b'torch habayis. On the other hand, I could see no reason why in Eretz Yisrael we shouldn't be Mekayim mitzvahs ner Chanukah b'derech shetiknu Chazal, b'derech shekosav HaRambam, b'derech shekosav HaShulchan Aruch. After all, Persum Enisa. Persum Enisa is the essence of ner Chanukah. And therefore I am madlik b'fnim, and I have another Chanukiah outside my house. I make the brocha in the loka b'fnim, and without making any hefsek, I am madlik the neres b'chutz, and only after I am madlik neres b'chutz do I say haneres halolu onu madlikim. But that's not a psak. It's not something I recommend to others. But that is my personal minig. I am madlik b'fnim because that is minig avoisai, minig raboisai. I'm madlik b'chutz because we live in Eretz Yisrael, and there is no reason we shouldn't make Persum and Isra Rabim. So I wrote a big arichis about minig Chasidim, but let's go back to the sugya of Beis Knesset. In Golus, this goes back 1,000 years, all the Rishonim, besides the Rambam, all the Rishonim write, min hogenu la'adlik b'fnim, Sephardim and Ashkenazim, Tosfos, Rosh, Rashba, Ritva. So Tosfos were Ashkenazim, Rashba and Ritva was Sephardim. The Rosh was an Ashkenazi who became a Sephardi. He didn't become a Sephardi, but the Rosh was a fascinating story. The Rosh was one of the greatest Gedolim in Ashkenaz. When the Rashba passed away, Kehilas Barcelona, which was the biggest Sephardi kehillah in Southern Europe and Spain, they took the Rosh to be their Rav. It was a precedent, never to happen before or after, that the leader of Sephardi Jewry was an Ashkenazi, and that was the Rosh. So Tosfos Rosh, Rash Boritva, Ozerua, Rivash, Mordechai, Meiri, they all write, Bismanas or Madlik Befnim. Ozerua clearly writes, even though it's not a sakona. And the Gemara says, B'shas sakona, manichal shalchon v'daya. We're not in a sakona, but nevertheless, we light Befnim. Comes the Rivash and he says, because we're losing out Persum and Esa, that is the minig to light in Beis HaKnesses. Kolboy, Hilchos Chanuka, offers two additional rationale. Where does the minig Adluka Beis HaKnesses come from? Number one, Orchim. There are guests that don't have a home, and they can be Mekayim the mitzvah Adlukas na Chanukah Pesach Beis HaKnesses. They don't have a home, homeless people. Just like the Rishonim bring the minig of making Kiddush v'Havdalah b'Beis HaKnesses, and the reason we make Kiddush and Havdalah b'Beis HaKnesses is because Orchim, they don't have a home. They should at least hear Kiddush and Havdalah. It's the same reasoning at Lukas Nachanaka b'Beis HaKnesses for guests that are homeless. Madlikan all of b'Beis is Yaisu that look at Bebais. Obviously, there were people, no one was Madlik Aleim Bebeisai, and for them, we're Madlik and Beis HaKnesses. Another reason that the Kolba writes, and this is very interesting, Lahaz Diresa Brochais. You know, today, we live in a mediocre world. We don't have the Geonim, the Iluyim, the Gedolim that we had hundreds of years ago, but neither do we have the Ameratzim. So today is a learned world. Everybody knows how to daven. Chazor Seshatz originally was Loitzi Misha Einu Yedea. Where are all the Ameratzim? So sometimes we say we're the greatest generation, but maybe the Ameratzim of yore are assimilated of today. It's not that we're so great. We were left just with it from Talmidei Chachamim. But regardless what the reason is. So in the world of yore, there was far more Amaratzis. There were so many people that didn't even know how to daven, didn't know how to read, and the Shliach Tzibur was moitzi them. Women didn't know how to daven. You know, I heard from the Kloisim Rebbe many times from my great Rebbe that the Rebbetzin of the Bnei Yissaschar couldn't even daven Lashon Kodesh. She just said Tchinas in Yiddish. So the Kolboy says, Lahaz Diresa Brochais. Before people go home, the Shliach Tzibur lights them Beis HaKnesses just to teach them the brochas. They should listen to the brochas of the Shliach Tzibur. They should know what to say when they go home and they light their own candles. And when I learned this kolbeh, I wonder, did each and every one of them take out a smartphone and record the Shliach Tzibur? If people are Amaratzim, how would they remember by the time they get home the nusach of the bracha? So I could only guess. They knew the general nusach of but they just didn't know what the specifics are, and therefore, those are the three fundamental interpretations that we find in Rishonim. Where does this nusach habrocha come from? Yes. Navo kol makom mislahadik na Chanukah bebeis HaKnesses lo yitzim mishi eino iboki. Gam hidu mitzvah bepirsum hanes v'zecha lemigdash. Does he write the other reason I just mentioned? Well, I don't see it right here, but I do recall from my memory.
It's the Lahazers of Brachas is there. Yes.
Where is it?
Let's see if you could.
I definitely remember.
Yes, we prepared also. We had it here. If you can scroll down, we'll show the Ilam. It could be. It's in their Beis Yosef. Is that possible? Bring it down.
The Beis Yosef also brings the time of Orchim. Yes, the Beis Yosef in the second line of the Beis Yosef. So let's get back to our dilemma. The Beis Yosef paskins that we say a bracha on adlokas beis knesset. The Mishnah Berurah says, just like we say a bracha halal b'Rosh Chodesh. That is sufficient for Ashkenazim. Yes, because Ashkenazim say a bracha in beis knesset. But say a bracha halal b'Rosh Chodesh. But it doesn't explain the shit of the Shulchan Aruch. Because in Siman Tov Chav Beis, Siv Beis, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, we don't say a bracha on halal b'Rosh Chodesh. So why does the Shulchan Aruch paskin that we do say a bracha on adlokas aner bebeis knesset? So I want to make two comments. The Griz in Hilchos Brochas, Briskerov, Griz al Rambam in Hilchos Brochas, has a very yesodisika mahalach to explain the Rambam. The Rambam maintains we don't make a bracha on a minig. The Briskerov explains it's not because a minig is not a chiyuv. A minig is a chiyuv, especially in brisk. But it's not only about brisk. A minig is a chiyuv. Twice in Shas, the Gemara says, Churan Sal Gimel, Psochim Daf Nun, Minolam, how do we know a minig is binding? Al Tito Ishtor Samecho. But the Briskerov says, but a minig doesn't have a chefze de mitzvah. It needs to be a chefze de mitzvah. A minig is binding. It's a chiyuv gomer. But we can't say a bracha only if we could say asher kedushono b'mitzvoisav v'tzivonu. B'mitzvoisav. Berchas a mitzvah is berchas a mitzvah. You cannot say a bracha on everything that is binding, and a minig is not a chefze de mitzvah. Therefore, says the Briskerov, halal on Rosh Chodesh is not a mitzvah, because Rosh Chodesh is not one of the days that you say halal. It's not a Yom Tov. Matzah b'leil sheni shel Yom Tov, leil sheni shel Pesach. Even though the Gemara says Yom Tov sheni shel Goli, it says Aru b'min adam yisechem shebiyudechem. It's a chefze de mitzvah. It is matzah. And therefore, everybody agrees that Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath, we say a bracha on matzah. So that is the mahalach of the Briskerov. According to the Briskerov, one could argue that is the difference between a Chanuka b'beis knesset and halal b'Rosh Chodesh. For two reasons, halal b'Rosh Chodesh is not a chefze de mitzvah. Aleph, Rosh Chodesh is not a day that there's a chiyuv halal. Beis, chotzi halal is not halal. If you don't say halal sholem, it's not really halal. That's not the chefze de mitzvah. Last week I said a shir about a psak of the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Tov Peiches. The Mishnah Berurah says if you skip one word in halal, you're not yotze. I brought the Pri Megadim that paskins differently. But if you miss an entire perik, that definitely isn't halal. So I'm following in the footsteps of the Briskerov to explain what is the difference between adlokas na Chanuka bebeis knesset, that the Beis Yosef agrees we do say a bracha, halal b'Rosh Chodesh, according to the Beis Yosef, we don't say a bracha. So according to the Briskerov, we could only say a bracha on a mitzvah. A mitzvah is a different chefze than a minhag. Halal b'Rosh Chodesh is not a chefza de mitzvah, and I add on to the brisket for two different reasons. The halal is not a halal, and the day is not a day that necessitates halal. Masha enken adlokas na Chanuka bebeit Knesset. It's Chanuka. It is this man mitzvah. It is Pirsumei Nisa. So the neshama of Ner Chanuka is here. Pirsumei Nisa b'yamei Chanuka. Yes, we lack the details, the halachic qualifications. It's not Pesach based on mebechutz. It's not a chiyuv. It's a minag, but it's a chefza de mitzvah. And that would be the difference between a Chanuka bebeit Knesset of the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, we do say a bracha, and halal b'Rosh Chodesh, which according to the Shulchan Aruch, we don't say a bracha. And now I want to share with you a gewaldig and chiddush of the Gra. The Bir Gra, and I think it's both in Tov Reish Ayin Aleph and in Tov Pei Zayin. The Bir Gra is medame hadlokas na Chanuka bebeit Knesset to amiras halal b'bote Knesset beleil Aleph shel Pesach. So Tov Reish Aleph Siv Zayin, when the Ramah says we make a bracha, and the Shulchan Aruch says we make a bracha and adlokas ner Chanuka bebeit Knesset. Could we have a look? Bebeit Knesset menicha bekoisel dorim umadlikin umevarchim. Could we have the Bir Gra? I once again hope that my memory is not playing with me. Yes, here it is. Raya mahalal b'leil hapsochim shenitkan al hakois v'oimrim bebeit Knesset mishum pirsumei nisa. And that is in Siman Tov Pei Zayin Siv Daled. Once again, the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says we say halal and bebeit Knesset with a bracha. It's not a chiyuv. The chiyuv is to say halal. Halal is an integral part of a Godesh of Pesach. We say halal in the Godah, but we say halal and bebeit Knesset as well. So today's shir is about Chanuka. It's not about Pesach. But the Goen says it's the same minag. There are different reasons in the poskim why actually do we say halal and bebeit Knesset. Just like I just quoted 3 different explanations, what is the origin of adlokas na Chanuka bebeit Knesset? We find a few different approaches in Hilchos Pesach. What is the origin of the mitzvah of saying halal bebeit Knesset? One reason is because halal in the Haggadah is divided in 2 parts. We start halal before the Suda, we finish halal after the Suda, and that is where the minute comes from to say halal and bebeit Knesset. But the Goen has unique interpretation, and I want to share with you the way I understand the Goen. The Goen says, Pirsumei Nisa is a choives yochid, but there's a special inyan Pirsumei Nisa she'al yedei hatzibur. It's a choives aprat, but the minig is that it's a choives hatzibur as well. And that is why adlokas na Chanuka bebeit Knesset is associated, according to the Goen, it's the same meaning as halal bebeit Knesset. In Brachas Yud Daled Omed Aleph, we find that halal is Pirsumei Nisa. It's interesting. It's only once in the entire Shas. Brachas Yud Daled Omed Aleph. Halal is Pirsumei Nisa. And the Goen says, Pirsumei Nisa is incumbent on the tzibur as well. It's not only a choives aprat. Chiyuv halal is on every yochid. It's part of Seder HaGodesh of Pesach. Hadlokas na Chanuka is on every Yochid. Pesach beisoy mebachutz. However, yes, the Gemara, Halal Derabanan, Odilma Persima Nisa Odif. And that's why Halal has a Yisad which you don't find by Kriya Shema. So in this Gemara we see Halal B'Yamei Moed is Mishum Persuma Nisa. So the Gun's interpretation is, the minig is Persuma Nisa Al Yedei Hatzibur. And that is an explanation why, even though the B'Siyos of Paskins, following in the footsteps of the Rambam, that we don't say a brocha on Halal B'Rish Chodesh, ein mevorchen on a minag, these two menhogim, Shechanor says we do say a brocha. Halal B'Beis HaKnesset, Siman Tov Beis Zayin, Tov Reish Ayin Aleph, Adobas Na Chanukah B'Beis HaKnesset. And this is a new approach and a new interpretation. Does it have a source in the Rishonim? Maybe it does. Maybe it does. I quoted 3 different reasons. But if we go back to the Beis Yosef and to the Kolboy, they also write, Hadlokas na Chanukah b'Beis HaKnesset yesh persuma nisa. And it is not only the Rivash that says, we started lighting in shuls when we stopped lighting on Pesach Beisoy Mebachutz. That's not what the Kolboy says. The Kolboy says, Hadlokas na Chanukah b'Beis HaKnesset yesh bo persuma nisa. But we already do persuma nisa. Second line in the Beis Yosef, when he quotes the Kolboy, because of oid tam acher, shehu kedei lefasam hanes b'fnei kol ha'am. Lefasam hanes b'fnei kol ha'am. Kol ha'am is in Beis HaKnesset. And my pshat in the Kolboy is based on the Bir Hagra. We already do persuma nisa on Pesach Beisoy Mebachutz. No, this is a communal persuma nisa. The persuma nisa in your private home, even if it's a Pesach Beisoy Mebachutz, that's your persuma nisa. The Farasam Esanes B'fnei Kol Ha'am. B'fnei Kol Ha'am means all the congregants, all the chaverim, all members of the Jewish community together in Beis HaKnesset. So this Kolboy substantiates, could be a source to the Bir Hagra. But the Bir Hagra is the first and the only one to connect the minig of Chanukah b'Beis HaKnesset to Amiras Halal b'Leila Seder b'Beis HaKnesset. That's a spark of genius. And the way I understand the Bir Hagra, yes, there is a chiyuv persuma nisa al harabim al hatzibur, and that is why in these 2 menhogim, the Beis Yosef agrees we do say a broch. Oid rega adabero, a gewaltige chiddush of a Baruch Frankel. So, my minig is when I give shiurim, I think it's important sometimes I share with my talmidim a brief biography. We quote the Torah of Gedolim, and it's important to appreciate who these Gedolim were and just know something about them. The Baruch Frankel is the Baruch Tam. And history has its ways. The Baruch Tam is the Sefer of the Baruch Frankel. Very few people know this Sefer because it was a big mefalpel. And Derech HaPilpul today is not really central in Olam HaYeshivas and Olam HaTorah. But the Baruch Frankel was an onev, and he used to write Hagos on many svorim that even though they were B'nai Doiroi. So we have the Gos of Baruch Frankel on the Chavos Das, they were contemporaries. We have Baruch Frankel on the Noida B'Yehuda, he was almost the same age as the Noida B'Yehuda. We have a Gos Frankel on Turei Even. We have a Gos of Baruch Frankel on many svorim, and also on Shulchan Aruch. And probably in his mind, the Hagos was something which was just B'derech Agav. That was not his life's work. The Sefer Borech Tam, almost no one learns. I would challenge the tzibur I am speaking to you right now. I doubt any of you knows the Chiddush of the Borech Tam. However, his Hagos are soilus nikio. We see his godless and his yashlis in the Hagos, which he wrote Kivederach Hagav. The Borech Tam was a misnagid, but he was a father-in-law of the Divrei Chaim of the Tzan HaRav, which is an interesting phenomenon. He was a misnagid. Why would he take such a Hasidic son-in-law? Because obviously the Divrei Chaim was not only the Miyasid of a Hasidic dynasty, the Miyasid of Tzan Hasidim, he was the Gadol Ador as well. And the one that published the Borech Tam was the Divrei Chaim. The Sefer came out after the Ptir of the Borech Tam. The Divrei Chaim was Mishtadli, published the Sefer. And in the introduction to the Sefer, the Divrei Chaim writes, in the first year after my chasana, I learned with my shver most of the Shas with the Rishonim. Wow. I think the Divrei Chaim's daughter must have been a real Bas Talmid Chochem. First year that we have a mitzvah v'simachas ishtoi. So the Divrei Chaim should have spent some time with his wife, take some tiulim. So his shver learned with his new Eidim, Shona Rishoina, Shas with the Rishonim. And I think that is the way that Divrei Chaim was Makayim v'simachas ishtoi. I could assume that, she was a Bas Talmid Chochem, she was an Eishes Chavar, probably that was her simcha. So anyway, the Borech Tam Tov Reish Ayin Aleph has a gewaldige Chiddush and he writes, Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah is two different concepts, two different ideas. It's a Choyves Gavra and it's a Choyves Habayis. The Choyv rests upon every individual. And it is also Choyves Habayis like mezuzah. When a person lights in his own home, he is Makayim both Chalokim b'chod ha'machta. But an achsanai that is far away from home, ve'ein medlikan olav bebeit. Why does he need to be mishtatev bepruta? To be Makayim the Choyves Gavra. It's not his home. So he doesn't have a Choyves bias, but he has a Choyves Gavra. On the other hand, when you light the Beis HaKnesses, you're not Yotzei. And even the Gabbai that lights Neiros and Beis HaKnesses with a brocha comes home and he lights with a brocha in his private house. Why? Because there's a Choyves bias. So the Borech Tam is mechadish. If an achsanai lights in Beis HaKnesses, and then he comes home to his achsanya, he no longer has a chiyuv of ner Chanuka. He doesn't need to be mishtatev bepruta. And even though his minig is every night to light in his achsanya, if he lit in Beis HaKnesses, he can't make a brocha. Because Monavshach, he doesn't have Choyves Habayis. And the Choyves Gavra, he was Yotzei in Shul. So that's the Chiddush of the Borech Tam. V'ani hakoton v'hadal, I disagree with this Chiddush because I think when you light in Beis HaKnesses, you're not even Yotzei Choyves Gavra. We cannot detach the Choyves Gavra from the Choyves Habayis. I personally don't think that there are two different dinyonim, but even if they are two different dinyonim, we can't detach one from the other. And the Choyves Gavra, you're only Mekayim when you light in your home. Al Pesach Beisim Mevuchutz, Al Shulchanoi. Hadluka beBeis HaKnesses, we're not Yotzei anything, neither Choyves Gavra nor Choyves Habayis. It is a minhag, and it's only a minhag. It is a minhag on which we say a bracha, even according to the Shulchan Aruch. So let's just have a very brief summary of today's Shia. In the Rishonim, we find 3 tamim. I'd look up a basic Knesset. The Rivash. We started lighting in shuls when we stopped lighting our Pesach Beisum B'chutz. So we're missing out Persum and Nissa, and therefore we light in shul to be Muslim, the Persum and Nissa that we're losing out. The cowboy, just like Kiddush b'Basic Knesset. Orchim. Lahasdir es abrochos. But the cowboy also write the Faza Mesanes B'fnei Kol Ha'am, and that brings us to the Bir Agra. And the Bir Agra says, how come the Shulchan Aruch paskins that we make a brocha and adlukas ner Chanukah b'Basic Knesset? The Mishnah Berurah writes like halal b'Rosh Chodesh, but according to the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, we don't say a brocha halal b'Rosh Chodesh. Sephardim don't say a brocha on halal b'Rosh Chodesh because they follow the Bis Yosef. So the Gaon says there are only 2 minhagim in which, according to the Bis Yosef, we do say a brocha, and that is halal b'leila seder b'Basic Knesset and adlukas ner Chanukah b'Basic Knesset. And that is Persuma Nissa Shel Rabbi. And I think this Bir Agra also has a source in the Rishonim, Kolboy, quoted in the Bis Yosef. Another reason, another origin of adlukas ner Chanukah b'Basic Knesset, lefas mesanes b'fnei kol ha'am. And I think the emphasis, the hadgosha is b'fnei kol ha'am. When you light, even those that do light al Pesach Meisam B'chutz, it's not the tzibur. It's Persum and Nissa of a Yochid. Some more people will see, less people will see, depends who goes on the street, where you live. And that is the Persum and Nissa of the tzibur, and that is the same minig as Hallel. B'leila Seder, based on the Gemara Brochas Yudalet, that Halal is also Mishim Persum and Nissa. So I find this sugya very, very interesting.